Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
This is not your usual episode of Cut the Clutter where I declutter some complicated news story of the day. This is different and I will tell you how. So this one should begin with a caution, a warning and full disclosure. Caution, I told you that this is not your usual Cut the Clutter episode. A warning, because I may just end up boring you because I'll be talking too much about myself and my life as a reporter. And 3, full disclosure, because I am also plugging an idea to you. And I will also tell you who to blame for this. You have to blame my daughter for this. My older one, who said that I am stupid. All daughters say these things to their fathers. That I must be stupid not to have written my memoirs, except particularly of my years as a reporter. Now, there are 50 reasons for not writing something. My old reason was editors do write memoirs between jobs. My second one was editors write memoirs when they think their life is done, their working life is done. So put it all together. None of that is true for me, so why should I? So an idea came from her and she said, this should be like my birthday gift. So start it now. And the idea was that maybe you like speaking to an audience. So speak about the interesting, the more important parts of your working life, particularly as a reporter, on camera. And maybe this can be transcribed later or you can write it later. So it becomes a genuine memoir and you don't end up missing out things, because after all, with the passage of time, memory fades, because nothing fades more decisively than memory. Once it does, there is no way you can find it. So I am starting something like that. That's the reason I said I am decluttering some of my own life. Once again, I'm talking about a few of those stories that I covered as a reporter today, handpicked because those are relevant today. Those are contextual today. And for the second reason, that Prashant Panjia, one of India's foremost news photographers and my partner in travels and crime and in journalism, of course, crime I say as a joke, for many years at India Today magazine, he and I did some of the most adventurous stories of our times together, particularly in the 1989 to 1992 phase. That is when, you remember, the Cold War was ending, the Eastern Bloc was breaking down, Afghan war was reaching a stage where Soviets were withdrawing. Many things were happening. Pakistan was on the boil. Kashmir was on the boil. Punjab was on the boil. So we did many of the stories together. And the Gulf War also took place at that time. Now he's produced a book. So he's beaten me to a memoir. He's produced a book called That Which Is Unseen. Right? So in this book, he has listed 59 of the most important stories he thinks he's done in his life. He and I were born in the same year, 1957. So, a long life for both of us, a long working life. Now, 4 of those stories were stories in which he and I were partners. We traveled together. So, because he's talked about those 4 stories, and I spoke at the release of his book last week, Saturday, in Delhi, and you can see that full broadcast of our conversation on our YouTube channel. It's nearly 2 hours, and you will find it fascinating because Prashant's photography is so good and he explains those pictures. I thought that I will also start talking about some of these stories now to you on camera. Today's Cut the Clutter is all about some of this, but this will not happen every day now. In fact, from tomorrow, Cut the Clutter is back to normal. Who knows, tomorrow we might be talking about the debt crisis in China. We are spoiled for choice. We may be talking about the Ordnance Factories Board reform. We may be talking about the energy crisis in Europe, China, and also the coal shortages in India. But we'll have many subjects to talk about in days to come, but not this. However, every other day, every now and then, I will talk about some of these stories from my reporting life, my life as a reporter. and I will talk to you on camera, and these will be available as our premium content, which means if you are a member, if you take that membership on our YouTube channel, not just our subscription, the two are different. Membership on our YouTube channel, that is 159 rupees a month, then you will have access to this premium content. So this will be my memoir on camera, in video, in my voice. You can watch it. You just have to pay a little bit of money to watch this movie, this real life movie as it plays out. So which are the ones I talk about today? The 4 stories that are joint stories that Prashant has listed in his book. One is to do with Afghanistan, one is to do with Gulf War, and 2 are to do with Pakistan. Although if you go deeper, one of them has to do with Pakistan as well as Afghanistan, as well as the arms bazaar and its easy availability of automatic weapons in the AFPAK region, and from where they have spread all over the world. Now, the first story I talk about is a story about a warlord, because you've been hearing that word quite often lately, particularly in the context of Afghanistan. Oh, so-and-so is a warlord. Rashid Dostum is a warlord. So-and-so is a warlord. Ismail Khan, that Afghanistan is controlled by warlords. Warlords make their alliances. What does a warlord look like? So every warlord doesn't look like somebody with a long beard and with a rosary in his hand. Some warlords, in fact, the most formidable warlords look something like this, and you will see the picture separately on your screen also. So this gentleman is General, honorary general, but called General Ismatullah Khan Muslim. General Ismatullah Khan Muslim was a famous Mujahideen fighter among the many people who were described in those days as the Lion of Kandahar. By this time, he had stopped being a Mujahideen. He had built his own private army. He had made his deal with the Najibullah government. I'm taking you back to 1989. He had made a deal with Najibullah government, and he was helping him fight the Mujahideen. In return, he was allowed like a monopoly of heroin trade in Kandahar region. He had, as I told you, a private army. Look at him. See his pocket. He's got the handgun here, right? So this is better than Gabbar Singh. In fact, Prashant's chapter says Gabbar Singh's redux, but this was better than Gabbar Singh, even to the extent that, except to the extent that if he called out, Areo Samba, then his Samba would not respond, because his Samba, or his personal bodyguard, cum factotum, or whatever you call him, or hatchet man, was this young fellow. This young fellow you will see on the screen also. He was his personal bodyguard. He was deaf and mute. So he could not speak, he could not listen. But you know what? He could see and he could shoot. And he could sense trouble, and anything that he saw as a front to his boss brought trouble. So an incident that we remember is that somebody who was wearing a cap, as the general passed by, dared or was impertinent enough not to bow as the general passed by. So this Mr. Samba, who couldn't hear or couldn't speak, he went ahead and threw the cap from that guy's head away. So this Mr. Samba, who couldn't hear or speak, he could see that this guy did not show good manners and bow in front of his boss. So he just went ahead and with one swipe sent his cap flying. I'm sure after that, nobody forgot to bow before General Ismatullah Muslim. Now, General Muslim, as he was called, he once bared his body to us to show 45 bullet wounds. He had taken that many bullets, and that's how it became a legend. But now he was spending his time, lots of money, generating a lot of money, gun running, drug running, and having a deal with the government, so he could go anywhere, do what he wants. So his pastime in Kabul was to organize weekly dog fighting matches for his own entertainment. So he had a bunch of dogs, mostly mastiffs, big ones, and he would have them fight, and he would put money on one, money on the other. People would put money on one, money on the other. It was just entertainment. So one of the pictures that we have in this book also again is him talking to one of his favorite dogs. It so happened that while he was talking to the dog, he slapped the dog sort of affectionately. Dog bit him on his hand and drew blood. Now he felt a little bit let down, but his dog bites him in front of us guests. So he sucked at the blood, spat on the side and gave the dog one in the face because he will not take Badtamizi even from his mastiff in front of outsiders. Now, we got to know him, and it so happened that a few days later, we went to Mazar-e-Sharif, which is in the north of Afghanistan. Remember, there was a lot of talk about Mazar-e-Sharif falling or not falling this time as the Taliban were increasing their hold over Afghanistan. So, we were in Mazar-e-Sharif. We ran into him and his people, and we ran into them because there was only one guest house kind of place to stay in Mazar-e-Sharif at that point, and he and his people had commandeered all of it. So we landed there, they saw us, and he saw us, and he said, "You are my guests, you be with me." So we were there. So I will just read from you this para from Prashant's book. It says, "We ran into Ismatullah Muslim once again a few days later in the holy city of Mazar-e-Sharif during the Navroz, that is the New Year celebrations. Shekhar and I were invited to his Jashan, that is party, where two Uzbek North girls danced to old Bollywood songs blaring from a cassette player. The general sat in the center." Now imagine, these two Uzbek North girls were dancing. General and his troopers were all sitting there having fun. So this is Gabbar Singh raised to the power a lot, right? I have not even seen anything like this in an Anurag Kashyap movie or a Vishal Bhardwaj movie. Forget Gabbar Singh. Because this was for real. So all these boys were there with their rifles and machine guns, cradling on their laps, and drugs and liquor was being passed around as if it was a buffet, right? So you had all kinds of drugs. You had heroin, you had hashish. He was chain smoking hashish all the time anyway. In fact, even when his dog bit him, he spat that blood and just lit one more joint. It was like life was back to normal. So while this is going on, Hindi film music is playing on a 2-in-1. Remember in old days we used to have this 2-in-1 cassette recorders. So one of those is playing a 2-in-1. Dada there, General Muslim, sitting in the middle, fake playing a harmonium. There was no harmonium, but he was playing it like this while the music goes on. And these two poor girls were doing their motions, and this guy, General Muslim, was showering money at them like this. Now, after a while, Prashant got tired and went to sleep to his room. And these girls, by that time, everybody got a bit tired because given what they were drinking and what they were smoking and what they were pushing, because everything was available, they caught hold of me and they said, "Tum Martin ko janta hai?" I said, "Martin kaun hai?" So they said, "Martin, handsome." So I thought Prashant Panjiyar is good looking. I also, look at this. This is Prashant Panjiyar. This is a picture of ours from Kuwait after the liberation, and what you see behind us is a burnt out Iraqi tank, Saddam Hussein's tank. So I thought maybe they wanted to see Prashant. So I went back to Prashant's room and I said, "Listen, these girls want to meet you. Come, you meet them." So I brought Prashant out and they said, "No, not this one, Martin." So Prashant mentions that, but I will not give the story away. So I said, Martin kaun hota hai?" That is when one of the girls said, "Arey Martin, I am a disco dancer," which means Mithun Chakraborty. So of course we had to say, "No, Didi, we don't know any Mithun Chakraborty. We've heard about him, but he's a star, but we don't know him." So Prashant said, "General sat in the center, lip syncing and fake playing a harmonium while showering money on the dancers who later pestered Shekhar, promising favors in return for an introduction to Bollywood's disco dancer, Mithun Chakraborty." So these are the adventures that we go through when we go to cover big stories as journalists. And I can only talk about in such detail about the stories that I covered in my life. Now, this was during the first Gulf War. First Gulf War was 1991 when Saddam Hussein occupied Kuwait. So we covered that war in the strength of 2 for India Today magazine. So we were going everywhere. So we were seen in Baghdad when bombs were falling. We were seen in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv when Scud missiles were falling and there was a fear of gas attacks by Saddam Hussein. We were in Kuwait when it got liberated. We were in Jordan, in Amman many times. So in fact, foreign journalists, international journalists would see us everywhere. The same people, they had given us a name. In fact, I had forgotten this name. Prashant has reminded me, and that name is the name of his chapter. It says, "The Fastest Guns in the West." So we were called the fastest guns in the West because we land up everywhere. And see this picture. This is quite a picture. These are American soldiers who have victorious American soldiers taking pictures for souvenirs of the Iraqi soldiers they had killed. So that is how brutal war is. So we'll be talking about more such stories as we go ahead, but remember that will be premium content. So you have to take the membership. Today it's a freebie, but it will not be a freebie after this. After this, you have to put some value to this. That is the reason I said I have some matlab, some selfish interest. That is the reason I was calling it a full disclosure. So Prashant mentions that most of the international media had multiple teams in the Gulf who were equipped with NBC suits, that is nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. हमारे पास तो कुछ नहीं था. But our editor Arun Puri then had ensured that we had enough money. So he said, in those days, Indian journalists could carry very little money. In fact, you could only carry traveler's checks. Imagine cashing traveler's checks in a war zone somewhere. Nobody would bother. And you also got small RBI quotas, $165 a day. You don't send reporters and photographers out to a war zone at $165 a day. So he'd actually given us $4,000 in cash to spend when need be and come back and furnish the account. So we had the money. So money was not an issue, but a lot else was. So we arrived in Jerusalem just before Operation Desert Storm was launched. So we thought we'll check out Israel, etc., because that was the target of Saddam Hussein's, and then go back to Baghdad, because we were in Baghdad before Desert Storm began, and then we came to Israel and other countries. Then, of course, we went back to Baghdad while the war was on. Had it not been a frantic call from my wife, in fact, Prashant remembers it, from Delhi, we would have slept through the first Scud attacks in Jerusalem. We were at the Jerusalem Hilton on some floor, and we had all been given our gear in case of a gas attack, in case of a Scud attack. So we were given our masks. You will see that picture of me wearing a mask. We were given our injections of atropine and things in case nerve gas was used. We were trained by the Foreign Press Department how to use it. On the day we landed there to take our credentials, we were given all that stuff. So we were carrying all that bandobast with us. Then the hotel had briefed everybody that whenever there is a siren, we'll call you and warn you. You go rushing down to the basement where we have a bomb shelter, and you will be safe there. But carry your gas mask and carry your gas first aid with you, that is injection, etc. Carry the box with you. Also, they said, and when this happens, all your TV sets in your rooms will come alive and they will start announcing warnings. It so happened that we bother calling everybody in their rooms to run. Jaan hai to jahan hai. So he himself ran to the basement also. TV came on. We never paid any attention. When you are young and tired and in the field, you sleep very well indeed. It is at that point that Prashant also mentions, and I also remember that my wife called from Delhi, because those days there was no satellite TV in India. So she and Prashant's wife and a couple of other friends often would go to some place which had a satellite TV. In this case, I think the Taj Hotel lobby had one satellite TV connection. So they watched there that Jerusalem was under attack. So she called the hotel to warn us, and the phone rang. Somehow, some receptionist there put the phone call through, and we were told, "Are you mad? Your city is under Scud attack. You're sleeping in your room." After that, both of us picked up our masks and our injections and things, and we ran faster than you've seen anybody at any age running down several tens of stories into the basement. And we only caught our breath once we were in the basement. So once again, a story of adventures. After that, we drove into Kuwait when the war ended, and Kuwait was liberated. So on the day of the liberation, we were in Kuwait. This picture is from there. And that is where you see the wreckage of the war, and you see these destroyed tanks, and oil wells were on fire. There were columns of smoke all over. And we had rented a car in Dhahran. And what was the car that we rented? Because everything was so chaotic that there was no system. So somebody had stolen a car, a Toyota Corolla, and he rented it to us for $300 a day. And we rented that car and took it into Kuwait. So when we drove into Kuwait, nobody was bothering, right, about what car you had, because there was no border checkpoints. By the time we were coming back, border checkpoints were there, and they said, "Where are your papers?" So Kuwaitis you could still reason with, because Kuwaitis were still recovering. They were just coming out from captivity. But the Saudis, on the other hand, were very tough. And Saudi said, what car are you driving? Where are your papers? We had no papers. So we had to talk our way out of it. I will not tell you all that story right now. It was also the month of Ramzan. It was a tough situation to be in. There are two more stories here, which I will not talk about in detail because I can't give all of it away. And also, I have to also ration this so as not to bore you with too much in one episode. One, of course, was a very happy story. Happy story about somebody who brought so much joy into the lives of people who had reason to be very unhappy. So this is Abdul Satar Adi, who was called Pakistan's Father Teresa. Later was celebrated all over the world. So we discovered him in Karachi, we chased him, and we followed him into his shelters in the Sindh, although we did not have the visa to go there. And we got this marvelous story. I will talk about it at some other point of time. And then my favorite story of all time, which I might even have mentioned to you at some point, that is the arms bazaar at a place called Dara Adam Khel in the tribal areas of Pakistan. And this is where you can find any weapon in the world, right? Any weapon except maybe a nuclear weapon. So in fact, if you ask them, कि जी आपके पास कौन सा हथियार है? हमारे पास एटम बम छोड़ के सारा हथियार है. So look at this shop, this picture. These are mortars. These are big mortars. They are machine guns. In fact, if we blow up this picture, you will see that this is an anti-aircraft gun. From where has this anti-aircraft gun, or what is being sold as an anti-aircraft gun? This has been plucked out of a MiG-27 fighter that the Mujahideen shot down with a Stinger missile. So they've plucked out the NR-23 machine gun or cannon from it, which they are now selling as an anti-aircraft gun. And if you see the guy here, he is wearing and displaying the gear, the oxygen gear of a fighter pilot. So you could buy anything there. And in fact, I asked one of them, if you say सब कुछ मिलता है, तो आप टैंक भी दे सकते होते सर? हाँ जी. तो मैंने कहा कौन सा टैंक? कहते भाई नई सप्लाई आई है, 3-4 हमने पकड़े हैं, T-59 टैंक्स हैं. So I said, T-59 tanks? I said, it's a very good idea to get a T-59 tank in Delhi. Delhi में traffic is so bad, कोई side देता नहीं है, right? Everybody is a dada. So if you ride a T-59 tank, then everybody will get out of your way. So as a joke, I said, ठीक है, will you sell it to me? So he said, हाँ, I'll sell it to you and this is the price. So I said, but you know, how will I take it to India? So he said, उसकी आप फिक्र ना करें, बॉर्डर हम टपा देंगे, बाकी आप ले जाना उसके बाद में. So it was that kind of a place, and we had to be there. We had to go there and cut away from there in less than 2 hours because we did not have the permit to be in the tribal zone. So we just got there and we were just waiting for the first person to ask, आप साफी तो हैं, you are journalist, पर कौन से मुल्क के साफी है, right? And if that had happened, then our cover was blown and we were in deep trouble, right? Although I would have preferred to use some other word, but I can't use it in polite company like yours. So we would have been in deep trouble. So we were sprinting through that story, meeting these people, taking pictures. And I remember one line, they all hated Benazir Bhutto and they all loved Ziaul Haq and all the military dictators. So I asked one of them, कि आपको बेनज़ीर का कुछ भी पसंद नहीं है? He said, हमको उनका एक चीज़ पसंद है. So I said, क्या? He said, हमको उनका love पसंद है. I like her lips. So that is just to give an idea of the different kind of universes that a reporter's life takes you to. And I've done quite a bit of it in many places. And remember, I will be talking about this every now and then about one story, and that will be our premium content. I'm not giving you more of this for free. And this is also my response to my daughter's orders to get my memoir together. So at least I'm trying to do an audio-visual memoir.